With the printing press, it took 100 years. With smartphones, 10 years. I would expect with AI, it can be 5 years' time.
One of our biggest fears is competitors are releasing features faster than we are. Meet Pawel, an innovation consultant, facilitator, and product expert who pioneered contactless payments at Visa and now helps multiple industries transform with AI. This episode is for FinTech leaders who want to stay ahead of the AI revolution while creating lasting customer value.
If you're a bank, you should think 5 years ahead and be aware that your customers may not be humans. They will be bots, copilots working for humans. So if you're thinking about...
I want to start with a real fear because this is part of our real life as people in FinTech or in innovation. So basically, one of our biggest fears is competitors are releasing features faster than we are. That's just a fact, right? You're like, oh, guys, we've been working on this, or we've been thinking about this for ages, and then the competitor just released the feature. I think now, in the age of AI, either AI is going to allow us to build and ship faster, but at the same time, it will allow the competitors to do the same, build and ship faster. What's your take?
I think it's even worse because there's going to be more competitors. So in a nutshell, I work a lot with IT companies, and we're seeing that improving code, creating new software is becoming easier, faster. It will be cheaper in the end. So you can imagine that there's going to be more companies competing since you don't need, it's like with banking years back, you needed multi-millions of dollars to launch a bank. Then when we had this banking as a service solution, so platforms allowing you to use their software and their license to build a bank, it went down. The same is going to be now with this better availability of code being created. There's going to be more competition, more features. So I guess there is a reason to be afraid of. I don't know if this makes anyone feel better, but yeah, there is a reason to be afraid of.
Yeah, I guess that's why we're having this conversation, because fear on its own is just anxiety, but fear coupled with action and knowledge, we can do something about it.
Some companies will take advantage of that. Probably worst thing you can do is being in denial. So fear probably is the first good move since it creates this awareness of the threat. Now, as for actions, really depends on the company and your position. Number of scenarios we can all imagine. I encourage companies to look for scenarios where they start with low investments first and then gradually increase these investments if they see traction, if there is consumer interest in that feature they're developing.
Yes, definitely. So before we go deep into the topic, this podcast is about purpose-driven fintechs. How can we build more purpose-driven fintechs? Now we have another player into the equation, that it's AI. So how do we ensure that we use AI to have more impact?
As I've been saying before, the big picture, I would say we'll have more things happening around us in economy, in technology, many changes today. One of the changes is about, as you mentioned, software is going to be more available. So there's going to be more companies delivering solutions. Some of these solutions will be purpose-driven. Let's hope for that. So yeah, AI will be helping us to create software at better pace with lower costs. That will be probably the biggest enabler. How? Depends where you look for that purpose. In my opinion, one of the key areas when you think about the purpose of responsible financial behavior is about building good habits. That works best with probably kids, teenagers, but basically kids are better at building their own habits than we are. We're not lost. We can still build habits. Um, so I can imagine that, for instance, creating solutions that will support niche segments, such as kids often are, will be more available. It's going to be cheaper to have some features supporting building good habits among your customers. And in that sense, AI will be helpful. Would AI become a magic solution to that purpose-driven goals? Not really. It's going to be only an enabler. But we have problems to solve also in
Yes.
finance.
So can you expand a little bit more? Like, how could AI help us build better habits?
In terms of, for instance, let's stick to the kids. This segment that some banks are doing great work about, some fintechs too. Like, if you ever experienced its app Go Henry, they do remarkable job introducing trainings, tests, very engaging forms of education for the kid. And they've been doing that, to be honest, before AI arrives, like a Gen AI arrived. It's going to be easier, as I mentioned, since creating code is easier. And plus, I can imagine adding more interactions with AI, depending on how you want to create that overall experience and helping people to build the new habits. But yeah, it's not that AI is critical, it's an enabler. So with
Mhm.
more easier access to code, definitely mm, like building that type of solution is going to be faster. Also on the side of regulatory compliance, that's going to be something that's going to improve on the side of reaching customer, probably making them more aware of threats. In the same time, AI creates threats to delivers tools to fraudsters and scammers, right? And on the other hand, we can use AI to prevent some of that. So I guess there's going to be more than just one use case for leveraging AI to build more responsible financial solutions. I
Yeah,
I keep my fingers crossed so we make sure children and kids build better habits for the future.
exactly. And one of the things I like about you and your perspectives is that basically you work across industries. So it's not just fintech, like you've been working with multiple industries across AI. And then I want to go broader now. One of the, some people compared AI to the times when the printing press came in, meaning it is something transformational. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, it is. I know that comparison, but look, I've been to Piedmont, Turin in Italy just last weekend, and they have this museum of Italian car industry, which is Lamborghini, Ferrari, Fiat, Alfa Romeo. It's probably one of the most iconic um, auto industries on the planet, and they have the National Museum there. And you walk along the rooms, you see how that industry has been evolving. So I had this thought also regarding like the printing press, which needed more about 100 years from the development to trigger huge changes in a society, like Reformation. Then there were conflicts related to obviously people having access to books and knowledge and thinking on their own. But it had taken 100 years. With cars, if you walk across that museum in Torino, you see the first cars created by millionaires, supported with some really I would say probably nerdish mechanics engineers who had a combined passion. Sounds familiar, right? Like with AI, it's
Yeah.
millionaires and engineers. Uh, they created some prototypes, and then it took about 20 years to make that widely available, not only for the millionaires. In the late 20s, cars became more available, and then probably another 10, 20 years to make them available to everyone, labor workers in the factories. Same thing happened in Germany, in US. It took, with the printing press, it took about 100 years. With cars, it took about 30, 40 years. With smartphones, it took about 10 years for them to become transformational for the society. I would expect with AI, it can be 5 years time. So we're probably in one fourth of that maybe one third of that journey. Means that in 4 years time we should be able to see what's that level of transformation. And same as with car industries, it's really hard to predict where the impact will be the biggest. Today,
Hmm.
like the cities are built to support cars. I don't think that anyone building first cars would have this thought. Oh God, I'm creating a solution that will change the future cities, or will lead to wars over access to oil and gas. So it's unpredictable. We should be aware that the transformation can be huge for some industries. And if you're a stakeholder of one of the industries that can be impacted, actually, we don't know which will be, but so pretty much with every industry, you should explore opportunities. Otherwise, you'll be like this, I don't know, the transport company guy in 1910 or 1915 saying, horses are okay. I will not invest into this craze related to super expensive machines that no one really wants to scale. Um, yeah, just if you're a leader responsible for a company, you definitely should be aware that this clock is ticking really fast. And even if it's not your industry that it's going to be hit, if you have a 20% chance that your industry will be hit, you should just spend some time and hire someone who has more broad knowledge to give you some insights, some hints. But also by now we can sort of really see some industries that are being hit. The ones which have lots of traditional text to process media, brokerage in finance. These can be completely transformed.
Yeah. And I think like the message is also we need to be prepared, right? It's not going anywhere. We must be prepared. One of the biggest challenges business owners or business leaders have is how do we, given that we can use AI almost in every single process, how do we identify the use cases that would have the most impact?
I guess I'm sure there's more than just one way. I can tell you what I do with the companies I work for. I know that other companies have similar approach. So you go across number of benchmarking studies, inspirations, examples, how other companies have been using, not necessarily within your industry, have been using the new technology. Then, on the other hand, you go through the processes that you have internal within the company. Uh, you look into that customer segments that you see within the company. Then, if you compare these two areas, you're able to find some potential ideas to explore more, to look deeper. Another context that then pops up is obviously amount of money you need to spend and that gains that you can achieve if you pursue that opportunity. And we also have a solution to evaluate these early on. And then once you make these bets, probably like 2, 3, uh, go on, explore them. The good part of that technology is that for in most scenarios, the early stage, like ideation, proof of concept process is not that expensive. If you have a large scale of operations, we had projects. I had project where within a couple of months they provided return on investment.
Mm.
For instance, in supply chain management, right? When you have lots of documents and processes are not optimized. Yeah, in a nutshell, idea to get inspired by ideas. I encourage everyone to uh, get some people from outside the company. It just gives broader perspective. It's natural for everyone to be fixed on the way that they've been doing their operations. If you engage some consultancy, some experts, freelancers, or even facilitators to ideate, grab these ideas, explore them. It's still low cost. And then if you see an opportunity, obviously, you move to make an experiment.
So I want to build on that because you're talking about ideation. And one of the challenges we have as businesses is we need to differentiate, right? And we need to come up with differentiated propositions such that we can achieve the very famous product market fit. How can we use AI to help us differentiate, basically, in the process of innovation?
That's a good question, since one of the downsides of the solutions such as like ChatGPT or any other engines that support search is that they turn the results based on most popular scenarios. For instance, if you use ChatGPT, most of us probably do that. For research, you end up with top most common scenarios, most common results. So I would say that that's good because you need that human factor to make this judgment which bets to make to differentiate. Personally, one of the things I encourage people to do is look beyond your industry, because sometimes you can find a similar inspiring solution outside your industry and then introduce this within your industry and then use it as a differentiating factor. Yeah. AI helps to deliver. AI helps to process data. Now, to be creative and differentiate yourself, human brain is still probably better, but can be supported by less obvious inspirational examples from outside your industry.
Yes, and I'm a big fan of cross pollination. That basically it is look at other industries and then get inspired and then come and do something, like in your industry that was inspired slash related with the others. So, can we go a little bit more practical? Can you give me an example of a use case that you're like, hey, that's one that we can use as inspiration to ideate?
Yeah. So the example that I'm actually following on with couple of companies, we created a process to extract data from transport documents in supply chain management system. So basically, there is lots of PDF documents. They look sometimes slightly different or sometimes significantly different, to be honest. So us here will not help them. But then they have some same information on these usually two A4 sheets of paper, like bill of lading. Usually have who's sending that goods, who's receiving the goods, what are the goods, what's the weight of the goods, is there any additional information, and so on and so forth. So what I did with the team is we started to look for other industries who can have similar challenges. So they have basically piles of paper that slow down their operations. If you're able to improve the speed of processing these documents for transport companies, it means they are able to dispatch the trucks or ships day before or something like that. And that's huge saving. Now, so we looked across other industries, and it turned out like brokerage industry in finance is pretty much about that, getting requests from the client, especially when you talk
Yeah.
about corporate brokerage, requests from the client, uh, getting some offers from insurance companies, and then combining that information together into something that can be presented to the client. So there you go. And we already have a couple of brokerage companies looking into that, since it saves them not really the manpower, the manwork. It means that they can get back to their clients within a day or even probably within a day instead of couple of days. There's still a human factor. It's not fully automated, obviously. Um, but I would say that's an example of such a cross pollination, right?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, as a principle, I heard two principles there. Basically, exactly. Cross pollination. We're using like another industry to see how we apply it in fintech. So cross pollination principle, guiding principle number one is AI is being used to make processes faster. Because basically, if we are reducing our time to ship, build, create, regardless of which industry we're on, then basically it may be faster into customers' hands, and then we have a cost efficiencies basically. So that's one. And the other principle that I heard is, if we have different data sets, how can we merge them to then create more value? That's what I heard from that example as such.
Yeah, I would say that definitely these are at least two example, two use cases that are universal. I would add to that so it's speed, it's merging data, obviously. It's also a third thing that came up, which is also cross industry. So people in operations who I work with, introducing that type of solutions, at some point come up with new use cases, which is great. Like I'm an innovation consultant. Always been my goal to change companies' culture. So in the end, these are like the best scenario. These are ordinary employees coming up with their own ideas, uh, and that's also something that this use case is driving. So people in the company in operations see, wow. So instead of spending 4 hours processing that set of papers, I will need just 1 more hour. Just 1 hour. This is usually annoying type of tasks and jobs. So they are open to optimize additional areas of the additional processes. I'm sure there is a question that pops out: what will happen to their jobs, right? If
Of
they
course,
automate. So there is like that more optimistic scenario and the less optimistic scenario.
let's
The
go deep.
the optimistic one, in most of these companies, there is really significant room for progress with existing processes. And then on top of that, with these new capabilities, they can expand the business model, the model on which they offer product. It's same with, if you think of payments, obviously much more than me about payments, but what if they needed a day to be processed? You could send a wire transfer, but probably that type of payment would not work for you to pay at the store, because no one will wait a day to get their money. But once payments are within a second, it turns out that the same payment company, like the same payment products, can be offered as instant payment to buy something in a store instead of paying with your card. Improving the speed of processes opens new opportunities for the company. And
Mhm.
I like to believe that these creative, smart, innovative people will be critical assets for the future of the company. At these definitely. As
Yes.
for all society, there is going to be reduction of some jobs.
Yes. And you raised a very good point that is people. So, yes, AI is going to help with to drive efficiencies. AI is going to help us be more innovative and come up with use cases and differentiate. But then when it comes to people, like you say, there's the element of, hey, are people going to lose jobs? I am of the idea of AI can be an enabler, like you said at the beginning, also for people's development and career development. So how can we use AI to help people grow?
How can we? I'm sure we all are aware that it can basically give us instructions and help us to learn. Actually, I have this personal story from my daughter's school. I'm pretty sure her teachers are not watching that. Um, so I'll share the story.
Yes,
Uh,
please.
some of the teachers are great. Some of the teachers are maybe not so great. Life, right? You have different sets of skills everywhere. For one of the subjects, um, which is hard for my daughter to focus on that narrative that the teacher is sharing, and she thinks that he's boring. That's possible. I had boring teachers. So what we do right now with AI, we we take pictures of that. I can't say which subject is of that book she studies. We use it to feed AI, and then we create a podcast which discusses um, that subject in an engaging way. So there are two people discussing that subject. It's super fun. It's very engaging. It's way easier to process this information, to keep to be focused on it. You don't need to read the book. So if you're she's not driving a car, but if I'm driving a car, I'm using similar tool to listen to that information that's, for instance, is extracted from some report. I would not like AI to teach me directly, but this is a good, like a layer of delivering information. So it creates nice touch points with some people discussing some subjects from the book. So
I
there you
think,
go, one example.
yes, I think you raise a brilliant point. I've done that before. So basically, it's as people in the industry, like our inbox may be inundated with industry reports and you download them, but you never read them. You skim through them, right? And you're like, oh, that page was interesting. And that's what you keep in your mind. So the other day, I used that tool that you're referring to and I uploaded the report. And then I got a 10-minute conversation between two AI agents. And it was basically they were discussing the key highlights of the report. And I found that just so good because then I could have them in the background. So that saved me time. And then two, they did the work of skimming through the report and telling me what are the key points, not me. And then three, they gave me the insights in plain English. And we all like learning with stories, right? So it was like a very conversational way to absorb the insights of the report, to consume the report as such. And I love that. And I think if we were all to commit to reading one report a week, and we do it just with the AI tool that gives it to you in 10 minutes, you play it in the background, I think we could become like really good in our new knowledge acquiring skills.
Yeah. But there is that, it's like every innovation and revolution is bittersweet.
Of
And
course.
once I heard that type of podcast trained on some low quality information data, and it was very frightening to feel that how convincing it is, because
Mhm.
the way they operate sounds, the way they speak, it makes you engaged and convinced they need to be pros. And they were just saying bullshit. Yes. I mean,
You're spot on. You're so spot on. We need to be careful on the data that we feed them, but also we need to build this judgment to then say, hey, just like when we find a report online and we're going to the boss and it's like, hey, I found this stat online. The first thing it's like, what's the source? Like, where did you find it? Same. If we're listening to a LLM generated podcast or the summary of something, we need to be like, hey, what's the source behind this conversation so that then we ensure that we are getting quality information. But at the same time, I think it raises an ethical question on how we can influence the masses based on voices and ways of speaking and communicating that are very influential. And people will just believe them. And at some point, we will not even realize that it's AI. It's just a conversation between two people. That's a bit scary.
yep, it is, but we're here to. Fortunately, we don't need to solve all the problems today. Maybe we'll meet again. Uh,
Exactly.
it's going to be one of the challenges that AI creates, obviously. Yeah. How are we able as a society to be resistant to the false narratives? It's a big question.
Yeah, definitely. And then as we bring like the topic of AI and we bring it closer to the business, there's a key question that we have as businesses, and would love to hear your thoughts on how can we, okay, it's 1st of Jan, right? It's first week of Jan. You and I are having this conversation. People are listening to us. And one of the key questions in their minds, because they have their new OKRs, is how can we solve for customer engagement and customer growth? That's a big question for any fintech. What's
Yeah.
your advice in the new year?
So I like this approach to building products or strategies, where we obviously focus on things to do this year, but we are aware, plan, three horizon perspective. At least some of that, like a small share, a small percentage of time we spend, we dedicate to envision where is this all going, where will that market that we're creating value for be in 5 years time.
Mm.
And as I've been saying before we met, it's unprecedented time of change for probably all societies. Just if you can try to think of it, climate changes, political changes, technology changes, regulatory changes. It's hard to imagine what we'll end up with, but no matter that, you need to think in advance how to what society, what groups will be, how groups will be impacted by these changes. For instance, with AI, on one of that keynotes I've been attending last year, I had that's I had that thought that, hey, if you're a bank, you should think 5 years ahead and be aware that your customers may not be humans. They will be bots, AI bots, copilots working for humans. So if you're thinking about engaging your clients, you should be able you should start thinking about positioning your product for the bots that will be basically hired, used by your clients, for instance, to compare consumer credit offers, right? So
Mhm.
you may need another persona within your spectrum of personas that you design for, which will be some type of copilot, AI copilot. So yeah, that's one of the examples. I'm sure that each industry can think of different potential opportunities that will come up, because they will come up always when you have that type of changes, like with cars. it's not the transport industry changed. Not only the transport industry changed, like the restaurants industry changed, like hotel industry changed, everything, all industries changed once the cars arrived.
Yes, you raise very good points, and I want to go a little bit deeper. So, for example, if we take a use case, travel, right? So, we all like to travel. People can relate to travel. So, we are saying, hey, Horizon 1, this is our roadmap for the year. But then Horizon 3, let's think about how would travel as an experience be like in 2030, basically in 5 years' time. And then we start ideating from that baseline rather than from today's baseline. Can you
Great.
expand on how we do that?
I've been working in innovation and research for some part of my life. And for instance, it's not that an innovation arrives to in, is adopted instantly by all of your customers. You'll have the early adopters, you'll have the innovators. So planning ahead t- today, you're probably able to find these early adopters, innovators. Like, for instance, people using AI to plan their holiday trips and then talking to the bot. I'm sure I do that, but I'm sure there are hundreds of people or thousands of people doing that today. It's likely to expand. So it should give you a hint of what to expect if 50% of your customers will be planning a trip with a bot. How to be ready for that, how to, I don't know, position yourself with that bot, or how to offer services that will be promoted in the context of the response that AI will deliver. Yeah, just thinking off the top of my head here.
Do you think that experience that you just described, where the bots are the ones that are doing the stuff for us, would that be Horizon 3 or is it more like our 2026 roadmap? Wild guess.
Uh, I would say that if we already see users doing that, like if that's 1-2% of users, we should expect it's going to become at least like a significant segment of our customer base will be doing that within 2-3 years. Like Horizon 3, not necessarily. Horizon 3, it should be something that will, like a quantum computing. It's Horizon 3 these days. It's not scaling yet, but we already know this could be disruptive technology, and some big financial companies have teams of people working on it because it can be so disruptive.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I would say that customer experience, addressing the need of clients who use bots, it's something that we should be start planning for since it's going to be reality in 2-3 years time.
And that's even starting with how do I know that the person who is reaching out to me with a query as a bank, as a fintech, is that Monica or is that Monica's bot? We need to identify, right?
Yeah, plus it
Or maybe
adds.
it's not relevant. It's just Monica's representation.
Now I'm having lots of thoughts instantly, overwhelmed with ideas, and also connected dependencies. Since obviously compliance is a question. Like if you're hiring a bot to manage your financial services, to what extent that who takes responsibility for these services and requirements, decisions that bot made. So it's going to be lots of questions asked by lawyers and compliance teams, but usually technology and solutions move faster than the laws and legal requirements. Yeah, they will need to adapt probably to that expectations of that massive user.
Definitely. I'm loving this conversation, Pavel. Thank you so much because it's thinking a little bit broader. But as we approach towards the end of the episode, I want to close with what is the one change that fintech leaders should embrace to build sustainable, customer centric, and AI powered businesses that create lasting value to customers and the business, of course?
Yeah, I would say it's a broad question, but the answer is easy. Um, Leaders constantly need to make sure they build value for the customer, knowing that the definition of this value changes in time. Our requirements of the customers have been different 10 years ago, and there's going to be different in 3 years' time. The upside is today we have so many opportunities being created, but this shifting world, changing environment, changing industries. If you're in fintech, you may discover that your key target will be e-commerce, and if you create some APIs, some services for e-commerce companies, you partner up with them, that may be your sweet spot. Because the value for the customer may not be dependent only on that financial product. It may be built up on a number of services that we use as customers. So, in other words, how to build that sustainable, right? AI driven and product of value for the customer. Make sure that your processes uh, are designed so they detect where the value for the customer can be created. It's really low cost compared to delivery. The
Yeah.
discovering value. Yeah, that's my advice.
Amazing. Thank you, Pavel. As usual, it was amazing having you in the show. Hope to have you again.
Thank you. Thank you for joining, for inviting me, and enjoy that new year. I'm sure it's going to be excited and full of new ideas.
Definitely. We'll see the progression of ideas into use cases into product launches. So we have a full year ahead. Okie dokie. Thank you, Pavel. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
See you next week.